Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are painting one of my favorite realistic watercolor objects, a giant glowing rubber duck, floating by the harbor. In this demo, I will walk you through how to paint translucent forms, capture glow and bring light through color. I will start with the sketching of the duck and I will show you how to layer the first wash, second wash and creative forms, how to create this look three-dimensional. And we'll finish with the final details. And let's get into it. So when it comes to sketching, I do this for every painting I do. I always focus on the bigger forms or bigger shapes. For example, for the duck, I always think about the body as one single shape, as a circle of rectangular or oval shape, whereas for the head, it's just one big circle. Again, I also think about little rubber proportions when I sketch, because since our duck is a major focal point, and it will read the entire painting that any other objects in our painting. And again, you can see that I also started with the duck first. The reason being is, and since it's a focal point, I will just put where exactly I want it, then I can focus on other areas from it. And there's also one more tip when it comes to sketching for watercolors is keeping it light. Because watercolor is known for the transparency, so if you have some paints there which is of a little bit of transparency, the sketch will show through. However, if you see any darker values, for example the nose of the duck, which is super dark, so we could go and block that value a little bit darker, because once we have a darker value, it blends with it. And you can see that there are certain areas I kept it darker and certain other areas I kept it really light. Now we successfully finished our sketching, and I also did the sky wash, and now I'm going to the first wash of the duck. So when you're doing this, make sure keep it really light. And I'm using this color called medium yellow, and I don't have it in my palette, and I did have this color when I was painting for another commission. And you can also see that I'm keeping as light as possible, because the reason being is I want to build this really slow, and I don't want to go my values a little bit darker. And this is one of the secret watercolors, is layering it really slow. And when people see this duck, and they might go darker without knowing what value it is. Because you can also see that once I blocked on the duck, I'm also doing the washes on other areas. The reason being is I want to check my values based on my reference as well as my duck. And since my duck want to be my main focal point and I want to read this, so once I finish the sky as well as the water, so now I'm going to layering at the bottom part of my duck. And again, I'm also having a little bit of water in my brush, so making sure to not to leave a lot of blotches there. And it's just like it reads as a one single shape. Now successfully we finished our first wash. Now we are going to the second wash. However, if you see the first wash what we applied, it got really pale or it got lighter. And that's how it works in watercolors. Even though if you put a brighter value, it gets lighter. So that's why I was talking about layering it slowly step by step. So when I do the second wash, I'm always constantly thinking about my light and shadow. The light is coming from the top right. And you can see that I'm taking tissue paper to create that eyelets there. And the first wash what we applied underneath, it shows through. And it gives this really nice rounder form for my duck. And you can see that just by adding that eyelet, it shows that the roundness on the duck of the head. So now I'm focusing on the body part. And again, even for the body part, I'm thinking about where my eyelets are. So I'm going to apply the wash, the shape. And even though it looks like I'm painting really fast, but I sped up the video at least 3 times. And I also took my time to fill in the shape. And I'm not doing it slower or faster, but I'm doing it in a medium phase because I want to create this really nice blending of colors together. And just by doing that, you can see that it's already looking really nice. So I'm going to take a tissue paper and creating the eyelets where it's coming from. So you can see that as soon as I take the paint from the object, it gives this eyelets which is coming from the top right. And this is another way to create eyelets using watercolors and tissue paper. And you can also use a clean brush, but I recommend using a tissue paper because it doesn't have any pigment in the paper. And this is the wash which decides our duck in a three-dimensional space. And you can see that I'm going a little bit redder in this wash just to show my roundness of the duck. And I'm using the red orange, and I'm also using a tinge of blue, a little tinge of blue, to show the value a little bit darker. And you can see that as soon as I added that, you can see the light side and the shadow side. And I do the exact same thing at the bottom of the duck too, and it has a wings at the bottom, so I'm trying to do that. And you can see that now as soon as we did this layering, it shows the light side and the shadow side. Once I layered the wings, I'm also going to the bottom part, and I'm also constantly checking my reference how the light and shadow separates for the duck. And this way it kind of gives this roundness of the duck for the body too. And you can see that I'm doing the same thing. And if you see the drawing or painting, this is called the core shadow, which separates the light side and the shadow side. And you can also see that I'm taking a clean brush and getting rid of some of the paint at the bottom. So that's kind of like a reflected light. So the light hitting the floor and it's hitting back at the duck. So it gives us a lighter value where it's bouncing back on the duck. And there's also some details at the tail of the duck, and I'm trying to add that as well. And as soon as we added this wash, and you can see that it kind of gives this three-dimensional look already for us. And I'm also taking another bit, and I'm seeing that is any other areas I can separate the light side and the shadow side. And even where the neck separates the body and there is a darker value, so I'm just adding that value there. And you can see that as soon as we add it, it separates the head on the back part of the body. And same thing at the front part of the body too, front part of the head, and I'm going at the bottom. So this constant checking is really necessary in order to create a realistic objects, because this is really subtle. Yet if you do this step, and your objects or anything you paint will look dramatically realistic. And you can see that I'm enhancing my core shadow even further, and as soon as we do that, it gets more three-dimensional and the form reads even better. So I'm going to use the clean brush, and again I'm trying to create this roundness of the form, which is curves from the top of the head to the bottom of the head. And that's how the form rolls over whenever lights hit a rounder object. And the same thing where the neck connects the body, and that's the important part too, so I'm focusing on that. And this is the last step, and it is also a crucial step whenever we are painting realistic objects, is form building. So it's kind of similar to the third wash, but this is the wash we have to constantly squint your eyes and seeing that our object looks three-dimensional or not. If it looks three-dimensional, let it be, don't touch it, and add the final details. If not, try to add some more values to increase it by increasing the value using red darkness orange, like as I'm doing it now. And if you want to lighten some areas, use a clean brush with clean water, and you can get rid of the paint from our object. So this is just to enhance and seeing everything in three-dimensional. For example, the wing of the duck, if you see, the form turns from light to shadow side, and it also a rounder form. And I want to capture it, and that's why I'm spending more time to adding the darker value and the lighter value to create that effect. And again, this is what I said, this is really crucial. And you can see that even at the tail of the duck, I want to make sure that it reads. So I'm just increasing the value near the duck to create that shape. And in the front of the duck, I also want to create the shape a little bit darker. And that's where it separates the background and the foreground. So I kind of did that. Now I'm doing the same thing. So I will repeat this process, constantly checking my reference and to see if my the object looks three-dimensional or not. Until then, I'll work on it. And again, sometimes people tend to overwork, and a lot of my students, beginners, make this mistake of overworking it. That's why you have to constantly squint your eyes and check your object, it looks three-dimensional. And once it starts looking three-dimensional, and don't touch it, just leave it and and focus on other areas and start adding the final details. And this is the easiest step in watercolors, is just adding the final details. And a lot of my students or even beginners, they tend to go to this step really fast, but this is a step which need to be done last to avoid overworking. And now you can see the duck looks three-dimensional, and there's only a few things we need to add to bring this home, especially the final details, especially for the eyes as well as for the beak. And as soon as we added the beak, as you can see, and I'm also taking some time because this is a really crucial part for the duck. And as soon as we add this, and this become like a real orange giant duck. And that's why I'm taking some time. I'm making sure to doing it properly. And you can also see that I left some eyelets at the top so that, you know, the light is hitting a little bit on the top of it, the top of the beak. And once I'm happy with it, and now I'm going to add the eyes, and the eyes is a little bit tricky, and I want to make sure that it follows the roundness of the duck at the top of the head. So think about you're adding a sticker on top of a round ball, and in this angle you have to think about that, and you can add it. And as soon as we add that, you can see that the value kind of sits really nice on top of it. And when we come to watercolors or painting any realistic objects, and this is really important, just layering it slowly from first wash to the second wash, third wash, and checking the forms at the end to see that it looks 3D. And wait for the final details, and once you finish it, and everything sits on the place. And now I'm happy with the duck, and I'm just trying to add a couple of details here and there, and I think we can call this done. To summarize everything, what we learned to create a realistic object is keep the sketch really simple, and layer it slowly, and make sure that it looks three-dimensional. Squint your eyes quite often and see that if your form reads good and it looks three-dimensional, and you can stop it there. And one more thing is to add the final details at the end and not to rush it.